Okay, everyone, more big Game of Thrones news came out this week with reports about a second Game of Thrones prequel series officially in the works. Now, we had already gotten reports not long ago about one Game of Thrones prequel series produced by George R. R. Martin and writer Jane Goldman. That one will take place 1,000 years before the current events in the Age of Heroes, and it'll explore more of the mystery of the White Walkers. And the pilot of that first one will begin shooting in October. Wow. So it's coming soon. But the second series is going under the working title Empire of Ashes, and it will tell the story of the Doom of Valyria. Now, in the backstory of the Song of Ice and Fire series, Valyria is like the ancient empire that was mysteriously destroyed in some natural disaster event that's called the Doom of Valyria. Some people say it's a volcanic eruption or meteors. It's not really clear. It's a mystery. It's kind of like Atlantis or Pompeii, if we didn't know what destroyed Pompeii. But there is a creepy poem about it that's worth reading. It's from the books. The hills that split asunder, and the black that ate the skies, the flames that shot so high and hot that even dragons burned, the city of 1,000 years, and all that men had learned, the doom consumed them all alike, and neither of them turned. In Game of Thrones, we actually briefly saw the ruins of Valyria when Tyrion Lannister and Ser Jorah Mormont boated through it. Remember, that was the time when Jorah got infected with grayscale.
Plaque psoriasis.
Now, Empire of Ashes will also tell the story of the origins of House Targaryen. It was a minor family of the Dragon Lords in Old Valyria who rose to prominence by fleeing to Westeros just before the Doom, leading them with the world's only living dragons. That's a description from this release. Between the two of these, which are you guys more excited to binge and dig more into? And
I could be down for. I mean, dragons are always going to be fun, but the White Walkers are going to be more interesting for me.
I'll say that I'm on board with that, but I think also because in the books there's a lot about that Age of Heroes, and like there's so many questions that are unanswered, and there's huge decisions that are having to be made, and then the Targaryen family line is definitely a really complicated family drama series. So in terms of Game of Thrones, I'm more excited about the other one.
And the cool thing for you, Sam, about the dragon one is there's going to be a lot of incest on that one, which I know is your favorite part of the show. Right. I always love it when you have these genre properties that have a deep mythology that isn't really there's a lot of mystery to it, and then they love to just dive in hey, let's take all the mystery away, because that's always what people want. And yeah. It's not. Anyway, it takes some of the fun, because it's never as cool as you imagine. I thought, as you were talking about that, it'd be really interesting if they treated these spin-offs as almost like an anthology. So season 1 is Age of Heroes, season 2 is the Targaryen family. Mm-hmm. If there is a season 3, each season's another part of the mythology. And
that's so that, or Robert's Rebellion.
You know what I mean? You just kind of you don't have to, because after the Doom of Valyria.
Well, they're going to have to invent. That's kind of my point. There's not a story existing there. Yeah. So they're going to have to invent a couple of stories. So, there's one sentence about each generation.
Yeah. And so then if you did an anthology thing, it gives you an opportunity to hit the highlights, but not necessarily have to build out something that's supposed to be as rich and compete with the Game of Thrones itself.
Yeah, so the story is the key. Can they tell a good story? I think one smart thing to do is don't tell the same kind of story in both shows. 100%,
because that's going to the Better Call Saul example. It's a very different show. And I think Better Call Saul is a great example too, because it uses the clout that Breaking Bad got it to do something. If you just pitched that show cold, it would have never gotten made. But with Breaking Bad behind it, they'd be and you want to take it's so procedural, and it takes so much time with just little details, when Mike's trailing somebody using a baby monitor. Oh, you know what I mean? And so if these Game of Thrones spinoffs are able to use the Game of Thrones name to tell fantasy stories that they would never be allowed to do otherwise. That could be really interesting.
Yeah. So obviously, I have the question for you guys is going to be, which one are you guys more excited about? But I have a bonus question on that. Do you think that this idea about AT&T purchasing HBO?
The question was AT&T buying HBO. Well, there was that news report of the new boss going to HBO it's going to be a hard year because we've got to churn out 3 times the content because Netflix.
He was Nixon.
And it was I don't know about you guys, but reading that, it was really depressing, because it's I like the way HBO turns out. Less is more. It turns out less, but it is the best content out there, barring an FX maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think about these upcoming HBO prequel series. Which one are you more excited to see? Would you like to see another one that's not being included right now? There were 4 in the works for a while, and they've narrowed it down to 2, but we'll see what happens. And as always, subscribe to New Rockstars for all of our Game of Thrones news and analysis.